This chapter, consumers' consumption and well-being, relates to the role of consumption in the global apparel and textile industry. It gives unique insights related to the supply and the demand side of this industry. It also examines concepts associated with human well-being, a state of being comfortable, healthy, and happy, and explores common methods of measuring it. In chapter 1, we looked at how we measure levels and standard of living and levels of economic development. In this chapter, we are going to look at how are we going to measure standards of living and so on and so forth. The objectives of this chapter include discussing the foundations of apparel choices in relation to clothing consumption process, exploring the relationships between standards of living and apparel consumption patterns around the world. And we will be drawing upon some concepts which we discussed in chapter 1 related to how countries are categorized in developing, newly developing, and developed countries. This chapter will also provide foundation for interpreting consumption expenditure data related to developed, developing, and newly developing countries. Assignment 2 for chapter 2 is going to focus on analysis of consumer expenditure data for the US. So I would say try to relate the concepts which we discuss in this chapter as you're doing your assignment 2. Um, Use pertains to the way you use your clothing. Use would also include taking care of your garments. How do you launder? How do you take care of them? How do you hang them? How do you make sure that they're in clean stages? Renovation would include anything which would increase the life cycle of the garment. It could include repairing the garment. It could also include things like upcycling the garments. So anything which helps you extend the life cycle of that garment would come under renovation. Discard is the last stage in a clothing consumption process because it is also a form of consumption. And it generally means that you're giving up the possession. It also reduces your overall inventory. But you can discard in different ways. It could be something like donating to charity, which most of us do. It could also be trashing when you feel that there is no longer any use for somebody else. It could be stained, it could be torn, and that's when you may trash the clothing. Goods are, especially clothing goods, are categorized in three categories, which is basic goods, fashion goods, and fast fashion goods. Um, and these are classification which have long been used by apparel professionals, especially in the retail scenario. Fast fashion, I would say, is a more recent category which is included. Basic goods are goods that are standardized, utilitarian, and have infrequent demand for style change. Think of anything which does not change a lot in its shape, size, colors, function. For example, think about socks, maybe leggings, denim. So you're not going to see a lot of changes within that product category. For the industry, it helps having basic goods, especially for mass production and economies of scale. It also helps them for quick response manufacturing systems, and QR stands for quick response. It also helps in long production runs. Fashion goods, on the other hand, are anything accepted by substantial group of individuals at any given time. in a given place, which goods where goods that are individualized, differentiated by style and color, and have high peaks of demand followed by obsolescence. And you may relate to the fashion curve, which you may have learned in your freshman year about how we have the fashion rising, then you have a peak, and then you have decline in the acceptance of a fashion garment. Motivation for the firm to have fashion goods would be primarily to attract new customers, renew demand for a certain product. When they attract new customers, there is a possibility that they're going to buy something more. So, primary motivation to include fashion goods within a store or a brand would be to attract new customers and increase their sales. Primary motivation for individuals to buy or consume fashion goods would be to increase their prestige and status and desire for change. Primarily, again, to have some spark in their wardrobe or closet. So each one has their own motivations of including those kind of goods. Fast fashion, on the other hand, are anything which are produced at rapid um, lead time, and they have very cheap in terms of even the manufacturing cost as well as the actual retail price. Rapid production, cheap labor, lower price point, and faster disposal. And fast fashion is also sometimes known as mech fashion. Please review the table 2.1 in textbook on page number 44. It gives you clear differentiation between all these three different types of product categories. Highly recommend to look at these characteristics, and as this would also be one of your questions on your tests and your quizzes.